Today we're talking all things rebranding or brand refresh. A lot of people have questions around this topic, so I wanted to address all the things. So if you've ever heard of a brand refresh or want to learn more about a brand refresh, we're going to dive into that today. Welcome to the Up in My Business podcast with me, Lex Lancaster, where you'll get an inside look at all things tech, business, and my life as a physical therapist turned digital operations expert. You'll hear all about my lessons as a business owner, the ins and outs of tech for your business, and more. From SEO, websites, and email marketing to automations, launches, and copywriting, I've got you. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. All right, so welcome back to another episode of Up in My Business. I am Lex, the host of Up in My Business and owner of Lex Lancaster Creative Co. If you're new around here, you can learn a ton about me on my website, lexlancaster.com. If you've been around here and this is not your first episode, thank you so much for coming back to listen to more from me. Before we get started into the main topic of rebranding, brand refresh, etc., I always start these episodes off with a little bit of a life update. So it's been a little bit since I recorded just because I was away and in California for some traveling. So it's been a little bit since I've recorded. So we're going to jump back into, I guess, some life updates that technically would have happened like 2 weeks ago, but regardless. So I went to California and I played all the volleyball. It was the best. I went out to visit Shantae and had the best time. I'm always super happy, having a lot of fun when I'm out there. I did get sunburned really bad. So typical Northeastern woman goes down there and I didn't put sunscreen on. And that was stupid. But didn't recognize that I was getting burned and then left the beach and my back was like the literal color of a red apple. It was so bad. I didn't think I would peel because typically I actually tan very well and I don't have any concern with it. I actually have a little bit of a secret. So when I was a lifeguard, when I was younger, and yes, I recognize that this is not healthy, so please don't judge me. But when I was younger and I was a lifeguard, I would get sort of not burned, but I would just get a little bit red because I'd wear my swimsuit, whatever. The lotion Noxema, if you take Noxema and you put it on your body wherever you got burned or whatever, and you leave it white, so don't rub it in, like put extra on and don't rub it in. And when you do that, the Noxema will keep it so it doesn't become a peel or just essentially becomes a tan. So, and it heals the burn fast. So I actually really love doing that. And I didn't have any Noxema on me, but that's just a little bit of a hack. This is not science. This has just worked for me. I don't remember who told me about this, but I've done it for God knows how many years. And it's literally never failed me. And people that I tell about it, they never have a problem. But once again, this is not health advice. So if you don't want to do that, or you obviously do it and it doesn't work, don't come back at me. But it works for me. And I didn't have that available to me, not because I couldn't have got it. I just was like, I'm not going to peel. But anyway, I came home and I peeled. So here we are. And it's a wicked tan line. I don't love tank top tan lines. I really don't love them, but I have a nice, lovely athletic tan line now. So it's kind of like all my runner friends are probably like, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. So the racerback tan line, it's super, super awesome. So anyway, I went to California, had a great time. And I'm trying to think what else. Oh, the other thing I wanted to share was huge plug for Delta. So I love Delta Airlines. I never really flew Delta when I was growing up. I haven't really flown Delta a ton when I was older, and I started recently flying Delta all the time, and Delta is like the best airline. I honest to God would not fly anyone else. I just enrolled in their credit card so that I can get extra points when I fly, but they're the best. Honestly, customer service was awesome. The only complaint that I had was that I didn't have internet. This sounds so like you're ridiculous, Alexis, but I didn't have internet. I was going to do a ton of work on the way home. And the plane that was our long leg that was flying from LA to Atlanta didn't have internet. And I was like, what the frick? I was so pissed just because it's so hard when you plan to do work and you actually saved work to do on the plane and then the internet's out. It's a whole different spectrum of like, ooh, I have internet. Let me find something to do. So I was like, God dang it. Now I'm like behind on work that I knew that I wouldn't be behind on. But anyway, so you plan for the best and then the worst happens. That's really not how the phrase goes, but that's what happened. So they actually gave me miles for that. So they were like, yeah, we knew the plane was broken, so we're going to give people miles. It was just really nice. So I like Delta a lot. So if you ever need like an airline recommendation, I will always say Delta at this point. They were awesome, and I love flying them. All of their flight attendants are so nice, and there's really funny flight attendants. I've had the best experience with them. So huge plug for Delta. Really, really love Delta. And I really feel like that's like all the huge life updates that I have right now as far as like things I've been doing. Business updates, nothing too crazy. SEO school is into the 4th module. Technically, it's a 2nd module, but it's technically part 2 of module 4, sorry. So that's going well. I've had really, really good questions. I am super pumped to share more about SEO. If you listen to this episode and you are a brick and mortar business owner, so any local business, so a physical therapy clinic, a chiropractic office, etc., I would love to hear from you because I have an idea that I'm brewing. I'm thinking about starting to do SEO retainers for brick and mortar folks. So anyone who wants to start ranking on Google and get their brick and mortar business on Google and ranking well on Google, I am thinking about doing a monthly retainer type service. It's going to be super limited. I'm talking there's going to be probably 1 or 2 spots to start off with. It will not be a large scale by any means, and I'm super excited about it. So and this is, like I said, this is still like brewing in my mind. I'm not entirely sure of like what the exact process is going to be, but if you're interested and this is something that you would like, I would love to hear from you because I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to do it. So if I do hear from people and they're like, yes, I would absolutely love to do that instead of learning how to do it myself, let me know. I just want to get a general interest. I'm also going to ask on Instagram and see what people say. So I have one last huge life update before I jump in with JNAP and talking about JNAP EMR, who sponsors Up in My Business. The one life thing that I forgot about is next Sunday, I am going to Taylor Swift. I'm so excited. If you know anything about me as far as like been around my ecosystem long enough, I love Taylor Swift because I grew up with Taylor Swift. So when she first came out with her songs, I was young, and I have watched her go from literally like a baby star to being who she is now. If you don't like her, whatever, you do you, but I absolutely love Taylor Swift, and her concerts are such an experience, and I love them so much. If you've ever been to, I hear Dierks Bentley is like this as well, country artist, and I hear Eric Church is kind of like this, and Luke Combs is like Taylor Swift, but Luke Bryan kind of was too. It's just an experience. The whole thing is an experience. And I'm super excited. I'm going with my best friend, and we're going to obviously go to the city and then go to Taylor, and I'm pumped. I haven't been to a Taylor Swift concert, I think, in 2018, 2017. I don't know. Whenever her last big tour was, I went to that. So it's been so long, and I'm so excited. And it could very well be like the last time I go see her, just because I'm kind of like the oldest person in the crowd now. And anyway, so I'm super pumped, and I will keep you updated on that. I'll record the follow-up episode, like Monday's episode, because it's going to be 2 episodes from now that you hear about it, because I can't record while I'm in New York City. So you'll hear about that in 2 episodes down the road. So I'll be sure to update you and tell you how amazing it was. And if you're going to a Taylor Swift concert, I would love to hear, because the ticket situation was a nightmare this year. So we were so lucky to get tickets. If you follow me on Instagram, then you'll see likely all the concert updates the day of. So be prepared, but I am super pumped. So let's hear from JNAP, and then we will jump right into brand refresh and essentially a brand rebrand topic. Taking a minute to thank our sponsor. The sponsor for this episode is JNAP. You may be familiar with Jane. Of course, you're familiar with Jane because I talk about them all the time. They're an all-in-one practice management software, making it easy to book, chart, and bill all online. They also offer a fully integrated PCI compliant payment solution called Jane Payments, which is designed to manage all of your payment needs. The team at Jane knows that they play an important role in protecting your data, and that's not just your client health records, but also credit card information. Jane Payments is PCI compliant, which helps your business keep your client billing information safe and secure. If you're curious to learn more about PCI compliance with Jane Payments or want to book a one-on-one demo with a member of their team, head to jane.app/payments. Again, that's jane.app/payments. You can also mention the show Up in My Business for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. You can also use the code LEX1MO, so LEX1MO, for your first month of Jane free. All right, let's talk about rebranding. People I work with, people who reach out to me, they always ask me about rebranding and brand refreshes and should they do it? What will it cost? What do they need to know about it? So I'm going to go through all of those things today. I'm going to try to make it a relatively short episode just because it doesn't need to be elaborated on too much. It's just more or less going through exactly what things mean. So that way you can have a better idea if you are someone who's thinking like, oh, I need to do a brand refresh. So let's go through the background. So if you're listening to this, you're like, well, what is a brand refresh, a brand rebrand? So essentially a rebrand or a brand refresh is when you change the way that your brand is represented, either online or in person. And typically people will do this after a few things may happen. So if their services drastically change, so I'm talking like we go from treating one type of patient to a totally different type of population, or we do a totally different service. So if someone does physical therapy, but then they start doing only nutrition coaching, or they add nutrition coaching, they might do a brand refresh or a rebrand. If your name changes, so some people actually change their business name, that will then be part of a rebrand or a brand refresh. Typically a rebrand though, because you have to redo everything for that. Business changes. So sometimes your business can just change in a way where like maybe you shift online, right? So that might be a brand refresh. Maybe you completely switch the way that you deliver things for your business. That could be a brand refresh. So I'm saying refresh and rebrand. I want you to think of refresh as sticking with the same foundation and then changing the things on top of that foundation. So you likely have the same name. You might even keep the same logo, potentially, but like you're making a ton of changes elsewhere. So your website, you might be making changes on t-shirts, on notepads, just little things that you might be making changes on top of things. A lot of people think of it as copy. So like the text on your website. Also, a brand refresh could be just getting a lot of new photos. That's just, I say that's a refresh because that gives your brand a whole new breath of fresh air. So when we're talking about a rebrand is essentially starting from scratch. So I want you to think about when you started your business, you came up with a logo, you came up with a name, you came up with a website, you did all the things. That's a rebrand. A rebrand is starting from scratch. So you may have a name, maybe that, and you just want to change your logo and your website and all the things, your colors. That's also a rebrand if you want to keep that name and change all the things. But just think that if you're doing a refresh, you're typically not changing all of the things. With a rebrand, you're changing most things. We all know this is semantics. Like some people would call it a refresh, some people would call it a rebrand. This is just my general definition. So when we talk about brand refresh and brand rebranding, the things that we need to think about, the things that you need to change or might be changing are your logo, your business name, your colors, your fonts, your entire website. So when I say the entire website, I mean photos, text, your domain name, right? So your entire website could be changing. That would mean if you change your domain, you would then be changing your domain emails like info@lexlancaster.com. If my business name changed, I would be changing that email to info@whatever.com. And then also people always forget this part. All of the company items, so t-shirts, notepads, any sort of like branded gear that you have, all of that needs to change or is likely going to change as well. So company items. Now, the big thing here is that I think what happens is people I love the fact that people want to do a brand refresh. I love that because the thing is you should be, and I sent out an email to my list about this. Brand refreshes should really happen pretty regularly. Like you should be going onto your website and refreshing the copy to, reflect what people are telling you in the clinic, reflect the new services you have, reflect the new clinician. So that's all like on the refresh side. But people don't necessarily consider the cost and the time that goes into a rebrand. And then also, if you change some things, a refresh. So I'm going to go through just what you need to consider. And then underneath the things that you're going to consider, I'm going to elaborate on a couple different things that are like, if in the PT world, we always say it depends. So we'll talk about like the it depends situations within those things. So the first thing you need to consider is cost. So cost and timeline are my big things, right? The cost is then broken down into a bunch of different topics. So I'm going to go through each one of those. So cost with the logo. So the thing is you need to consider the time that goes into deciding what you want. People forget the fact, and I have a whole episode on logo design that I will drop in the show notes, but when it comes to a logo, you have to decide what you want. So people will say, I'm going to change my logo, and then they don't realize that you then have to decide like, okay, what design do I like? Do I like the same type of design? Am I going to change the design? That is all time. So think about when you're doing the logo component and you write this down and you're like, how long will this take me? Make sure you factor that in, right? When it comes to cost, so cost for a logo, once again, that whole episode with logos, we'll go through all of that stuff, but you have to decide how much money you're going to spend, how much money you have to spend overall, and how much can you devote to a logo. So you can do it for free on Canva. If you listen to that episode, you know that you don't own that. So I don't love when people make logos on Canva because eventually if you ever want to trademark, you can't. And two, a bunch of people could have the same logo as you, which I don't love that. I wish that it would be, obviously unique. So yeah, that could be free. Great. So you design your own logo. It's free. If you get your logo designed, you have to factor in the amount of money. So I don't like Fiverr. I never use Fiverr. I like 99 Designs if you're going to use a design competitor. But once again, listen to that logo episode. I would plan to spend at least $300 on a logo. And then if you go with a full branding package, which some logo designers do, so they do your colors, they do your fonts, they do your logo, they do all of the typical palette stuff, that's going to cost you like $1,500 to $2,000. And I think people kind of, their eyes go wide open. But the thing is you're paying for someone's art. So when someone does a logo for you, it's art. They're drawing that logo. They don't start with like the pre-made template on Canva. They're drawing everything. So that, plus you're looking for their artistic eye. So I have people in that episode where they are, I recommend certain people to do logo design, and those folks are using their artistic skills to develop a package for you that makes sense. So yes, you get to say like, I don't like pastels. Awesome. I don't like blues. I want greens. Amazing. You can tell them what you like, what you don't like. But the thing is at the end of the day, they're using their artistic eye. So you need to plan for a decent chunk of money. And I think that a lot of people get taken aback by logo and branding packages and are like, oh my God, that's so much money. But just so you know, plan for that money. So cost, we talked about a logo. Now let's talk about a website. So with a website, you have to decide, the first thing you have to think about is skill level. So do you want to DIY it or do you want to hire it out? So when we talk about DIY, you can go on to something like Squarespace, which of course I recommend, and design your own website. You could also use, and shameless plug, for my Squarespace templates. So design your own website, it's free, and then you have to pay for the plan for the website. If you use one of my website templates, currently right now, it's $400 for a fully designed website, and then you plug everything in, and then you have to pay for Squarespace on top of that. So overall investment for the year is about, it'd be like $225 plus $400, so $625. That's the full cost for like a year, right? Because you'd pay for the template and then you pay for Squarespace for a year. If you decide to do something custom, so I have my Do It in a Day service, that's $19.97, so just about $2,000 without any of the add-ons. So I have a bunch of add-ons that I offer for my Do It in a Day, but that's where it starts for the done for you process. So that is me doing the website, putting in the copy, putting in the photos, all the things. So that's $2,000. And then if you want a fully custom website, you have to be prepared to pay fully custom prices. So I don't love doing custom websites because of who I work for. So I'll go into a whole episode on template versus custom. I recognize that I need to do that. But a custom website, and templates are fully customizable, by the way. Just want to make sure I say that. If you buy a template from me, it's fully customizable. So we can make it whatever it needs to be. It's just where you start out. The reason why I don't love a fully custom website for health and wellness professionals is because most of us are super type A. And I've worked with so many people who have hired people for custom design, and they see the end result and they hate it because they didn't get to approve of the end design before they started, and or because the designer was not able to capture what they actually wanted. So for what it's worth, I always recommend starting with a template, and I do a package where if people pick a template of mine and they pay for just the template, if they decide halfway through, like, this is not for me, then they can also upgrade to the done for you service. So it's not like you're stuck with the DIY quote unquote template. If you don't want to do it anymore, I offer that upgrade whenever. So that's really the cost of a website. So that is, once again, one of the things that you need to consider. How much are we going to pay for this stuff? We're going to go down to email and domain in a second, but I'm going to keep going down my list. So when it comes to the website, you got to think about your time. So this is the thing that I always tell people. I'm like, if you do not have time in your schedule already because you're treating or you're working all the time, you're not going to be able to fit time into your schedule to DIY this thing. So timing wise, you have to consider, what do you actually have to devote to it? And is it worth paying someone else to do it so it's done faster? On the time perspective, you also need to think, like, if it's September and you want to launch in January, you got to think about when do I want to start, right? So if you start in December, don't plan to launch in January for all this stuff. I recommend, in general, 3 to 6 months, more towards the 6 months, and be safe. So if you want to launch in January, I recommend starting this process back in June, and that's going to give you plenty of cushion time. And like, you could have your website and everything ready to go the 1st of October and still not launch until January. That's fine. But just for what it's worth, it's really nice to plan for about 3 to 6 months. So back to the time, you also need to think about the designer's time. So people are booking out. So if you start in June, your website designer might not be ready until September, or your website designer might not be ready until August. So this is, once again, me just saying, if you want to launch in January, if you have a goal of launching January 1, and I'm obviously using the January 1st. It's like, I know we don't really want to use that as like a benchmark or whatever, but it's easy. So if we do January 1st, then don't start in December. Do not start in December. That is silly, because then you're holding everyone. People pay rush fees. Don't get me wrong. Like, there is definitely a put me on your schedule, please, and finish this fee. But just understand, like, you don't really want that. So just for what it's worth. So the last thing on the website side is the copy, the website copy. So if you are good at writing text on your site, amazing. If you're bad at it, you can always hire someone. But I always like to tell people the cost of that is going to depend on who you hire. And I don't really like to give a cost of it because it can be anywhere from $500 to $25,000. Like, I'll be honest. I know copywriters who charge well over 20 grand to copyright, to write the text on a website. So just understand, like, that investment spreads far and wide. So writing the text on your website. If you are someone who does not like to write or does not have time to write, you should consider at least hiring an editor. I love copy editing. I don't like copywriting. Not yet. Anyway, I don't love doing it for websites at this point. I love sales copy, but I do not love website copy. So website copy editing is my jam. So I always offer people a copy edit within their do it in a day packages. So for what it's worth, the copy on the website is something that you will have to consider and put into your timeline, and also into your investment. So if you do it, it's free. If you don't, it's not. Next thing that we're going to talk about is your domain and your domain email. So a domain is about $20 per year. I always recommend people buy it on Google Domains or straight through Squarespace. Google Domains makes it really easy because then you can also buy your Google Gmail suite right on Google. You can also do that through Squarespace, but I recommend people go on, you buy your new domain, and if it's not available, obviously you can't have it. So before this whole process starts, you need to make sure that's available too. But the domain It's about $20 ish per year. And then when you get your email, if you get one email like info at, it's going to be about $6 a month. And if you get 2 emails, it's $12 a month and so on. So you can get your new email and that would be the cost associated with that. Timing wise, not a huge deal. It's just the availability. So I always tell people if you're going to rebrand and you have this fancy name or a new name and you go to the domain and it doesn't work, I would not use that name. So people will do all sorts of things and they'll do .ca or .ca is fine because that's Canada, but they'll do .co or they'll do .org. And that only works for some people. So don't bank on using .ca or .org for your website if the .com is not available. So that is the cost for domain and email. The next thing, I'm not going to talk about too much with the cost, I guess, with SEO because it's so dependent, but I just want to say one very specific thing. When it comes to SEO, your SEO is attached to the domain and the website that you have. So if my business went from lexlancaster.com to the creative shop, the creativeshop.com, my SEO does not transfer over from lexlancaster.com. That's not a thing. So understand that if you did a lot of SEO work or you're doing SEO work, it's not going to transfer over if you change your domain. So for my people who are deciding like, when do I invest in SEO? When do I not? If you're planning on changing your brand name, don't do it yet. Wait until you do it and then do SEO stuff. It's just important to me to let people know that when you move SEO stuff, when you move things over, it's not automatic. It's not like it's associating your body, like your physical body with a website and then it's going to follow you. That's not how it works. It's all with that domain. So when you change domains, you lose your SEO and that just is what it is. So for what it's worth, you start over with SEO. SEO also takes into account website life. So if I have a website that was built in 2014 and I have a website that was built in 2016, well, let's use a farther spread, 2021, then those two websites, if they did the same exact strategy, the 2014 one typically will get more traffic because it's older and that just is what it is. So just understand that your SEO will drastically change if you start to change your domain and get a new website. Don't assume it's going to move. And some people will not rebrand just because of that. So for what it's worth. I want to go back and just say one thing about emails, just because I know someone's going to ask. When you change your email, you have to also consider the fact that people have your old email. So you have to keep your old email active and then reroute that email to the new email. Because if you don't, you're essentially going to lose the people that are emailing that old email. I recommend that people do it between 6 to 12 months. So it's just super helpful because if you deactivate all those emails, you're never going to get the ones that come in. And if you change your domain name, you need to change your emails. So you can't get around it. So just understand that if you change your domain name and you get new emails, you have to then reroute your old emails to the new email. Okay. So that's the domain and the email. Lastly, I want to talk about apparel and branded stuff. I don't know what you paid for that. I don't know. But you got to think about all the things. Business cards, flyers, tablecloths, t-shirts, sweatshirts, pens, notepads, any sort of people have like branded Word documents. So all of that stuff, like the time it takes to swap out new logos, all of the things that you essentially put your logo on have to change. So the cost of that is going to be very drastically different between people because we all use different companies. We all have different amounts of things, but that is going to change. So just understand, like, plan to change that stuff, right? And just understand that the cost is going to be variable and it depends on what you need. So all of that stuff also needs to change. So lastly, we're just going to talk about my conclusion and about rebranding and refresh. And that's all I have for you today. This is I don't say super quick. I'm looking at the time like, oh God, that was longer than I thought it would be. But anyway, so in conclusion, the biggest thing you need to understand is that rebranding and brand refreshes are not like easy. I think a lot of people come to me and they're like, I want a brand refresh. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about it, because it's not easy. There's a lot of things you need to consider. There's a lot of money that goes into it and people don't necessarily understand that. So a lot of money, a lot of consideration that needs to be had just in the fact that, like, what do we actually need to do here? And how long is it going to take? So if you think ever that you need to do a rebrand, I want you to really sit down and plan out a realistic timeline. If you're someone who wants it done in 2 months, understand that you might be paying rush fees, or if there's not rush fees available, you might need to forego some of the things that you want to change, or DIY something you didn't want to DIY. Do not recommend. So plan accordingly and make sure you have the timeline set up. When it comes to planning, plan the monetary stuff too. I don't recommend not thinking about the fact that like you might be paying extra because, you know, you had more hours added onto your logo or something like that. So plan extra money like anything else in the world, and just plan that you can, of course, spend essentially what you want to spend or what you can spend. So I don't want you to think there's like a price tag that you have to spend. It's just, it depends on what you want. So on that note, what I want to say is I do know one of the tricks of the trade, if you will, is some people will actually plan to launch their brand February 1st, and they split up their costs. So depending on how taxes work, they split up their costs between the current year and the next year. So some people will actually pay for things or choose payment plans, however they choose to do it. So they pay for things in the beginning of the year and the end of the year. So they'll pay for the end of 2022. They might pay for their website and their logo. And then at the beginning of 2023, they might have paid for, you know, all the other custom stuff, their company items and all the things, just for like tax purposes. Because I know people like to, you know, sometimes you got to drop a lot of money at the end of the year. Sometimes you only got to drop a little bit of money. So sometimes people will plan for like a February 1st or a March 1st or April 1st launch, just because monetary-wise, it works well because you can separate out those payments into 2 different tax years. So for what it's worth, if you're someone who's like, I don't want to plan a launch on January 1st, which I don't blame you, then you can also choose a different time. Early spring is great, or late winter is great. It's just how you want to split up those payments. So that's all I got for you on brand refresh, rebranding. If you have questions, please let me know. If you're someone who's considering a rebrand and is really stuck, I also have options for coaching calls so we can really lay out your plan. I know some people are like, they listen to these episodes. I had someone DM me about this. They're like, I listened to your episode, but I still feel like I don't really know what I need to do. Like, I understand what you said in the episode, but I'm still not like with you. I have coaching calls. So oftentimes in PT, people would come to the clinic and be like, I had no idea you did this. And so right now I'm letting you know that I also have coaching calls that are generic, just strategic calls. So if you are unsure of where to start, you're not really sure exactly what software you need, you're not sure how to go about your rebrand, or you're not sure about the details of your specific brand and what you want with your brand, book a coaching call. They're right on my website. You can book a 30-minute, hour and a half. If you're not sure which one to book, just shoot me a DM and I will go over that with you, and we can see like exactly what time will make sense for you, whether it's 30, an hour and a half. So that's all I have for you. I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. I will keep you updated on all things Taylor Swift. I'm so excited, and I really appreciate you listening. I will catch you next time.